Right now, Spain is in the grip of a massive crisis. Today, we're going to unravel this incredibly complex web of scandals that's reaching the very highest levels of power. It's what many are calling a perfect political storm, and it's one that threatens the very stability of the state.
And look, the stakes here are incredibly high. This is not just some local political drama. It's a crisis that's making headlines around the world, with major outlets like The Economist calling for the Prime Minister to step aside just to break what they see as a dangerous, and I'm quoting here, political paralysis.
And the reason for that kind of intense pressure is because we're not just talking about a single isolated incident. This is a cascade. It's a whole series of interconnected cases, one feeding into the next, creating this huge systemic problem for the government.
So this government is basically under siege from two different directions. You could say it has two epicenters. And while they might look like separate issues on the surface, as we're about to see, they are deeply, deeply intertwined, hitting both the personal and the political heart of the administration.
So you've got two major cases here. On the one hand, there's the Begoña Gómez case, which hits incredibly close to home for the Prime Minister, involving his wife. And on the other, you have the Koldo case, which is this sprawling investigation into the very fabric of his political party, the Socialist Party, or the PSOE.
Okay, so let's dig into what these two investigations are really all about, starting with the one that's been grabbing so many headlines, simply because of who it involves.
The investigation into Begoña Gómez is all about accusations of influence peddling. The allegation is that she signed letters of recommendation for a businessman who, what do you know, then won some very lucrative public contracts. So the big question for investigators is, was her position as the Prime Minister's wife used to unfairly tip the scales?
And we're not talking about small amounts of money here. The public contracts at the heart of this investigation are worth around 18.2 million euros. That's not small change. It's a huge amount of public money that is now under a microscope.
All right, now let's pivot to the Koldo case, because this thing is even bigger. It actually started with an investigation into emergency contracts for face masks during the pandemic. But since then, it has just exploded into a much, much larger investigation, uncovering what's alleged to be a massive network designed to rig public works contracts in exchange for kickbacks.
So to really get your head around this case, you gotta know the key players. You got Koldo Garcia, the alleged fixer. Then there's his boss at the time, the Minister of Transport, José Luis Ábalos. And then, and this is critical, you have Santos Cerdán. He took over a powerful party role from Ábalos, which creates a direct line from this scandal right into the party's current leadership.
But here's the thing. The real story here isn't just about these two cases in isolation. It's about how they all seem to connect, forming a much larger web of influence and, well, dirty money that goes way beyond any one single scandal.
And that really is the million-dollar question, right? Are we just looking at a series of unfortunate, separate incidents of corruption, or is this something much more organized, a kind of network that's been operating in the shadows?
This map, which is based on some incredible investigative work, really starts to connect the dots for us. It shows how the players, the money, and the influence seem to flow between all these different scandals. You can even trace lines from the Koldo case to other controversial moments, like the Delcigate scandal involving that airport meeting with the sanctioned Venezuelan official.
So where did all the money for this alleged network come from? Well, investigators think they found the engine, a massive tax fraud scheme in the fuel sector, which they're calling Caso Hidrocarburos. It's believed to have siphoned off more than 182 million euros from the state.
So this is the really crucial part to understand. The alleged fraud wasn't just about stealing tax money. No, that cash was the fuel to, shall we say, grease the machine. It was allegedly used to pay for political protection, to fund bribes, and to expand the network's influence into rigging public contracts and even trying to set up international deals with sanctioned regimes.
To really understand what's happening now, we have to take a step back. Because for so many people in Spain, this whole pattern of a government getting bogged down in corruption, it feels eerily familiar. It feels like a cycle.
I mean, this timeline is pretty stark when you lay it out like this. Back in 2018, the conservative government collapses after being found guilty in the massive girdle scandal. Pedro Sánchez sweeps into power on a promise to clean house, a promise of democratic regeneration. And now, just a few years later, his own government is facing a crisis that looks awfully similar.
And if you just look at the raw numbers from scandals over the last couple of decades, it's clear this isn't about one political party. We're talking about billions of euros caught up in cases that have hit both of the major parties. It really suggests a deep systemic problem with corruption in Spain. Okay, so with this seemingly endless cycle of scandals, what's the actual fallout? What does this do to the country, to its politics and its reputation?
Well, for starters, the public's trust is just shattered. I mean, look at the polls. A clear majority of Spaniards, we're talking over 58% combined, want a change at the top, either through a new election or his resignation. Only about 1 in 5 people think the prime minister should actually stay on.
And this damage isn't just happening at home. It's hitting Spain's reputation on the world stage hard. The image that Prime Minister Sanchez has worked so hard to build, that of a respected European statesman, is being replaced by a new narrative, an embattled leader, bogged down in scandal, and that can seriously weaken Spain's influence.
So all of this, the cases, the political history, the public fallout, it brings us to a really fundamental question about the health of Spain's democracy itself.
So, let's just recap the bottom line here. These investigations, they're far from over. The government itself is under unbelievable strain. Trust, both at home and abroad, has been badly damaged. And maybe most importantly, this whole crisis points to something much deeper than just individual greed. It raises serious questions about systemic flaws in the state itself.
And that leaves us with one last, really critical thought. This is more than just another political crisis for Spain. It is a genuine test of the resilience of its democracy. Because when the public starts to see corruption as a never-ending cycle, the ultimate challenge isn't just about who's in charge. It's about how you can possibly restore people's faith in the very institutions that are supposed to serve them.